The bases dropped on a beautiful Thursday morning, July 25th in Atlanta, Georgia. Soccer Down Here is live for a Thursday Thoughts edition of the show. You can join the conversation on Twitter at Soccer Down Here. You can also tweet at us individually if you want to yell at us about anything we have to say. OSG Nelson for John, Longshoe for me, Jason Longshore, and we've got lots of stuff to get into this morning. There were games at all various levels of soccer in the U.S. yesterday. Plenty of things to talk about there. We were involved in one of them in the USL Championship. Atlanta United 2 and Charlotte had some fireworks. We'll get into it a little bit. Also NWSL with some great crowds around the country for their matches. Leagues Cup continued. We'll get into all that in just a bit. Felipe Cardenas of The Athletic will be joining us at 10 o'clock this morning. We'll get you an MLS fantasy update, and we'll start to look ahead to Atlanta and LAFC tomorrow night from the Bank of California Stadium. Just in case you have not heard yet about our programming schedule, tomorrow it will be a recorded show in the morning. Lots of interviews that John is putting together for you guys, previewing Atlanta and LA, and then sometime in the afternoon Atlanta time, maybe still the morning LA time, Mike Conti and I will have a live Q&A for you on a match day. So you can send in your questions as you listen to the previews, as you think of things. Send them in. We'll answer them live on the app, on the website, soccerdownhere.net, and on Spreaker later in the day. But today, we've got a couple hours of soccer talk for you, and let's start with all the action from last night, John. Leagues Cup continued with the quarterfinals. Both MLS teams involved lost, but lost narrowly. Houston took it to penalties, lost to Club America in their own building, and RSL lost 1-0 to Tigres. The couple things that jumped out to me here. One, Mike Petke was sent off by the referee after the match, which I guess shouldn't jump out to you, but it's good video anyway. And in the other one, the Dynamo had a great crowd at BBVA Stadium in Houston. That's a good thing to see. The bad thing to see is when DeMarcus Beasley, one of the ageless wonders who scored last night, gets a goal and is celebrating. Fans are throwing things at Houston Dynamo players in their own house.
Yeah.
That's kind of rough.
Yeah. And yeah, I just, you want to shake your head about stuff like that.
Well, it's not even about that. Like, it's not even about throwing things. We've covered that a million times. We're not going to get on a soapbox and get up to a pulpit and talk about that today. I'm talking about the spectacle of it. Houston's the home team. It's their house. The building is painted orange. It's orange. Everything's orange. Mm-hmm. And they're getting things thrown at them in their own house. That's like you invite people over to play poker and somebody beats you and then dumps the table over in your kitchen and knocks over all of your dishes and then leaves. That's insulting. That's rough.
Must have had a fantastic hand at poker at the table to do something like that.
Well, Giovanni Dos Santos had a fantastic hand in the penalty shootout, and he's the one who puts it away. Might have meant a little extra to him.
Mm-hmm.
Beating MLS team.
And yeah, and as you and I were leaving Fifth Third Bank Stadium last night and trying to keep an eye on that and get ready for the best teammate that you could have in Rio Tinto Light, anyway, on four legs. But yeah, you get the added spiciness of penalties, and then it ends up being Gio Dos Santos and Ross Donaldson, who was calling play-by-play, called it a storybook ending. Yes, it was, but you get that added to it, and your semis are set in some of the most aggravating ways humanly possible, and 3 of the 4 of them are from Liga MX by the time we were done. But yeah, long night in Houston for a bunch of different reasons. There was irony in Houston, and then you have Mike Petke's egress and a Kite in Rio Tinto.
Yeah, you might want to explain that last part because nobody has any idea what you're talking about unless they stayed up to watch.
Cat on the pitch in the 92nd minute, I believe. And it was just another one of those instances where you have a four-legged individual who was not in your starting 11s. He was not in your 18s. And it's just kind of hard to catch him sometimes. And then just kind of hanging out and knocking around the soccer ball a little bit. So it was a moment of catness late in Rio Tinto.
So the cat in Utah is pretty cool. We've seen dogs on the field before in many places. I don't think any of them top the Tlacuache, the Mexican possum that was on the field at Veracruz.
Wow.
That was by far the most. You have a bad memory, John. We talked about this.
No.
I was did a logo.
No, I was
okay.
The Saquache. That was what I was commenting on.
Okay. I'll let you have it. Okay. So Leagues Cup has not gone well for Major League Soccer. You have the LA Galaxy left to maintain the honor of the league, and we'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
I hope this thing's better next year. I really do. I hope it's taken more seriously across the board next year. I really, really do. One thing that was taken seriously last night was up above the border in Canada. The Vancouver Whitecaps were knocked out of the Canadian Championship by new Canadian Premier League team Cavalry FC from Calgary.
Calgary Cavalry.
Oh, Vancouver, you are really struggling these days.
What's the number? 0-6-4 in your last 10, regardless of competition. And
dismal winless stretch of 10 games across all competitions, 5 straight losses in MLS.
And if I was to ask you to name the only MLS side not in the semifinal round of the Canadian Championship, that'd be Vancouver.
Yeah, because there's 3, and Montreal has advanced, and Toronto doesn't even come in until that point. So, yes, Vancouver has some problems. Again, somebody comes into their building and knocks over all the dishes and breaks them. They didn't get things thrown at them in their own building, though. I will give Vancouver
there are enough people to do that.
Well, there's that. And that's a long way for Calgary fans to head down for a brand new team. But Maxime Crépeau had a save. He's unable to do it like he's done so many times this season, where he makes about 5 or 6 ridiculous saves. You can't count on that every time. And Vancouver's just not there at all. It's I don't know. Mark Dos Santos said this afterwards. He said, it's a different level. We can't be delusional here. MLS is a different level, different type of opponent, and it's more difficult to do what we did tonight in an MLS game. So we have to take the good things from this game and carry on. Okay. What good things? You got knocked out by a brand new team that's at a lower division. I don't know what good things you're taking out of this. At some point,
you look at
good things to build upon trope is just no.
Tired.
You got knocked out by a lesser team. There's nothing to take out of this.
I mean, you even look at the numbers, and I know that it's what you do with them when you have possession or whatever. Possession was 2-1. Literally, it was 68-32. Shots, 18-6. Shots on target were even at 3. And then crosses, 28-10. Total passes, 567-271.
Yeah, I mean, that's the possession and the passes. That's all.
Yeah.
It all shows the same. It's all that's great. And Dos Santos said we were the better team on the field, more possession, more in their half, pushed, created. But we missed some empty goals that are almost more difficult to miss than to score. And when those balls don't go your way, it's like everything piling on.
But you lost to a CPL team.
Yeah.
Calvary came to town and you lost 2-1 in aggregate in the Canadian Championship to a first-year side in your building. You have issues, sir.
They didn't beat Cavalry in either of the 2 games. I mean, that's the thing here is like you lost up there, scoreless draw, and then you come back into your own building and you can't win and you're out of the tournament. Marc Dos Santos was a very heavily hyped manager coming into the league, and I think he's shown in his career he is a good manager. He said when we were in Vancouver for that match earlier this season, he gave an interview with radio, a pretty long interview actually, and he was pretty open to talking about the situation. And he said that he wants his team to be a pressing team, a high-energy team, not quite Matias Almeida style, but from the description he's given, very different than what they are. And he said he didn't have the players to do it, so he's trying to figure out the best way to get results with this group, but still build towards what he wants to be. It all sounds good.
How long are you going to
build? You're in July, and you're out of your country's cup competition. You haven't won in 10 in any competition. You've lost 5 straight in MLS. It doesn't sound like you're about to make any moves in this transfer window to give you the pieces that you want to be able to do what you want. So then you're basically saying that 2019 has been a wasted year for the Vancouver Whitecaps, and 2020, well, then you'll have the players that you need to do what you want to do if you do well in the transfer window going into the 2020 season. We'll see.
I was looking at the roster of the Cavalry and came across a name that you and I knew last season in now USL Championship. And the guy got 15 minutes of run off the bench. Mauro Eustachio from Penn FC last season is on that Calgary Cavalry roster. And he was a sub.
He was a sub in this game. Let's not jump to conclusions here. I the Canadian Premier League, it's hard to figure out where the level is. I think, honestly, it's probably somewhere between USL Championship and USL League One, which is to be expected in your first year. So pulling the upset, I mean, it's not completely unheard of, but when you add that to what the Whitecaps have been doing lately, it's very bad times in Vancouver. And we've talked about the off-the-field stuff that it sounds like there's been a little bit of progress made and at least some meetings had and some things that are being discussed to put into place so those off-the-field issues never happen again. All of it combines to a wasted 2019 in Vancouver, and it's something that just can't continue. That's a club that should be bigger and further along than they are. You look at when they came into the league, Portland's won a title, Seattle's won a title, Vancouver just hasn't, and they don't really look that close. So we'll see what happens with the Whitecaps down the road. Let's get into the NWSL. 2 games last night. Portland Thorns with a huge win. Lindsey Horan had a big night. 5-0 over the Houston Dash, but the story is 22,329 on hand at Providence Park for the Thorns. Great attendance, great result for Portland, and now you're going to start to see in the NWSL with players getting back and teams starting to come back together, who will be in it at the end to win this championship. Right now, the Portland Thorns, they've played one more match than the North Carolina Courage and the Washington Spirit and the Chicago Red Stars. That's your top 4. Reign FC has 2 matches in hand. They're even with the Red Stars. Fairly tight. Portland's on 26 points through 14 matches played, 7-2-5 on the year. North Carolina Courage, 6-3-4, 22 points. The Washington Spirit picked up 3 points last night. They still have a game in hand on Portland, 6-4-3 on the year. Washington won that match 1-0 on the road in Jersey against Sky Blue FC. But the story here is Sky Blue had a sellout crowd at Rutgers. Good attendances, and I do agree with a lot of people out there talking about this. These numbers are outstanding. What's the next one going to be? What's that next match going to look like? That's the key. The good attendance is great because you feel that kind of obligation to go out and celebrate women's soccer and celebrate these players who are returning to action. Yes. Now are you a fan? Are you going to be a supporter? Are you going to come to more matches? That's what these clubs have to do. It's what the league has to do. These numbers are great, but I hope they're not in a vacuum.
No, Portland scoring 3 times in the first 23 minutes. And in a way, it goes back to the discussion we had yesterday about Chicago Fire and the matchup against Cruz Azul. You have something in your building. You're trying to draw that casual person in. You draw that person in first time out of the blocks, give them a chance to come back. Chicago Fire didn't do that. You're hoping that the NWSL franchises in Portland and Sky Blue, who have these opportunities out of the blocks coming back from Women's World Cup with every roster at full song, that they can continue to bring folks in after this first opportunity to do so. It's, how do you capitalize on the momentum? And for the NWSL, it's a key time to do it. Good signs, obviously, last night in a couple of different places, but it's where you go coming forward from this is what I want to look at, much as you do.
Yeah, I don't think it's fair to compare it to the Chicago Fire, though, because that damage is self-inflicted. I don't think the NWSL, having the attendances they've had before the World Cup, I don't think it's as self-inflicted as the Chicago Fire. I think it is a lack of awareness. I think it's a lack of accessibility. And, I'm constantly reminded when I think about what women's soccer needs to be, what the NWSL needs to be a viable business, and from that side of it, and for fans to get engaged with it. The survey that we talked about that Manchester City and Copa 90 did before the World Cup, access is such a huge part of the reason why people are not bigger fans of the women's game at the club level. It's just access. There's just no conversation about Portland, Lindsey Horan, big night. How did the tactics look? How did they play? What happened to Houston? Jane Campbell had a big save, but there's just, why do you go on the road and lose 5-0? Sky Blue, Washington Spirit, same thing. There's not enough soccer talk about these teams, about these players. It's a lot of the other stuff, which is good, but that's not what hooks you about being a fan. I think MLS falls into this at times too, where a lot of the conversation is about still, well, what's it going to take for MLS to be the biggest league in the world? Well, what's it going to take in Chicago for this attendance? We have to talk about these things to a degree, but there's not enough just flat out soccer talk like you're seeing right now about the NFL, for example. I mean, it's the training camps kickoff. You've got a gigantic, ridiculous crowd for the New England Patriots' first day of training, and they're talking about depth charts, and they're talking about position battles, and they're talking about which rookie's going to come in and do this, and they've been talking about this stuff all summer long, and there haven't been any games. The NBA, you had the free agency period, and everybody went nuts about all the storylines and what it's going to mean and which team is going to do this. Soccer, and especially women's soccer, has to get to that stage where we're talking about the players, we're talking about the teams, we're talking about the games, more than we're talking about the business and the dollars and the marketing. I hope it can, and we do our best to give you both, because both are important, but the soccer has to be the primary, and it has to get to be the primary. And that's what I'm hoping can happen, not just with our show, but with every show and every media outlet and all of it. And there are some great outlets out there if you are interested in the NWSL, if you want to learn more, if you're getting that itch and you want to pick a team to follow right now before Atlanta has a team in the league. There are places to do it. Dirty South Soccer has a volunteer who writes about the North Carolina Courage. Pro Soccer USA does great work about the league across the board. The Equalizer is a subscription site. They do have a lot of free coverage as well, but they've covered the women's game for a long time. I've mentioned friend of the show Jonathan Tannenwald and his work at the Philadelphia Inquirer many times. He does great work covering it. He's on Twitter at The Goalkeeper, does a great job of sharing all of the information across the spectrum. Those are the things that are going to take it to the next level, whether it's the Chicago Fire, whether it's the Portland Thorns, who are doing great, whether it's Sky Blue, Washington Spirit, whoever. It's a soccer team, and it's got to be about the soccer. And I think in Atlanta, we've seen that, and that's been really successful. The conversation here, more often than not, as I had this morning on 92.9 The Game with John Fricke and Hugh Douglas, is what's the lineup going to look like tomorrow night? How are you going to deal with LAFC's attack? When are Tito Villalba and George Bello going to get back into the team? How was the Brandon Vasquez injury? All these types of things. That's great. That's what gets people engaged. That's the meat. Sometimes it's a lot of sizzle, but the actual meat's not good enough. And I think that's been an issue with soccer coverage in the United States as a whole. I think there's a lot of people working hard to do it. It's just that access to it. So hopefully that will continue to grow. We'll talk about the Atlanta United 2 match after the break. It was a 2-2 draw with the Charlotte Independence. A couple storylines coming out of that. We'll get into it. We'll also get your MLS fantasy update on the other side of the break as well. John probably needs help with his fantasy team.
Check.
And we will try to do that as best as we can in the upcoming segment. We'll be right back.
Looking for future leaders we can trust and believe in? Look no further than the high school student athletes right here in Georgia. High school sports teach young people how to be effective leaders. It begins by making their grades and being on time for practice. It includes learning to listen, following directions, accepting responsibility, being a good role model. And it's about respect for officials, opponents, the rules, and each other. The result? It transcends sports. It gives us hope for the future. High school sports. There's so much more than just a game. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
Today's show is presented by Apelinsky & Associates, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience, supporters of Atlanta United, Faction, and Inter-Atlanta Youth Football Club. If you've been hurt in a wreck, contact Steve today at steve@aa-legal.com or call in 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Welcome back. Soccer Down here, July 25th. I've got Teise in Argentina up on my TV in front of me.
Are they shirtless?
No, well, there was a bit on the show. We talked about the shirtless man who was comparing his shirtless body to Daniele De Rossi. Daniele De Rossi is definitely not a hefty man by any stretch, but he has arrived in Buenos Aires, so Teise is pretty much going bonkers at the moment.
You wouldn't know.
Daniele De Rossi coverage, and it's all over Twitter. He will be signing, it appears, for Boca Juniors maybe today, which is just nuts. It's just crazy, and it's just fascinating to watch this. How, I mean, you had all the clips from the airport and his arrival, and camera people getting knocked down because they're trying to get their shot, and it's just absolutely bonkers. Let's get into something else that was a little bonkers last night. Atlanta United 2 and Charlotte Independence. Really good game, really good back and forth match. I think the twos showed some things that we just haven't seen enough of as of late when they've been on this really poor streak of results. They bounced back after conceding first. They went up 2-1. They did give up a goal that they didn't need to. It finishes 2-2, but you saw some feistiness out of this young group.
And, well, do you want to talk feistiness in general, or you want to talk about the final 5 minutes or so and how it spilled over the edge of the teacup?
I mean, it wasn't that bad. That's a little excessive. Let's talk the game first, and then we'll get into the post-match and end-of-match stuff. Bienveni Kanakimana. Probably don't know that name yet. If you follow the twos, you do, because you've seen him a few times. Just a handful of starts, come off the bench. Speed merchant, he's going to be able to get in behind and run. He showed a lot last night in, I believe it was his third start without going back to check my notes. Third or fourth. 2 goals for him, really good ones too. First one, great ball laid off to him from Jackson Conway, who had a big night. I thought Conway, as a young target forward, the soccer IQ that he is picking up, I'm really impressed with. And he set Kanakimana in. He was involved in both goals, had the assist on the first one. Kanakimana gets in behind, and it's a good finish because he gets the goalkeeper leaning one way, slots it to the other side. Second one, little fortunate for him. He's trying to lay it off with the outside of the right foot, back to Conway, deflection, but good presence inside the 18, hits the rebound, gives Atlanta the 2-1 lead. And they just didn't have enough to hold off a experienced Charlotte Independence team who hadn't lost in 7 straight, and now they haven't lost in 8 straight. This is what the Independents kind of do in the summertime, and they made a coaching change. They brought Mike Jeffries back, who had been there since 2015, went upstairs to be the GM this season, wasn't working out, comes back downstairs, and they go on this run. They're a tough team, and they're a tough team right now especially. Atlanta, I think, held their own, and when you see a young player like Jordan Matthews at left back, first appearance in USL Championship for him, show the maturity, make mistakes, but then learn from them inside the 80-plus minutes that he played. When you see the reaction from his teammates who go to give him a hug, shake his hand, give him a high five, give him a pat on the back as he's leaving the field as he's subbed out, you see Stephen Glass put his arm around him when he comes off and really wants to make sure he knows like how much good work a young player put in that moment. Those are the special moments you get with the twos. It's so much more about that than the results, and I know people get hung up on the results, and I totally understand it, but it's moments like that, it's moments like Jackson Conway developing as a smart soccer player, it's moments like Kanakimana, it's moments like George Campbell has had all season. That's what this team is there for, and if you're watching day in, day out, if you're watching the highlights, those are the things that you zero in on. The results have to get better because all of that's wonderful. It has to translate to a larger group of players that are able to do those things and get results in competition, 100%. But those are the things that are the most important about this group, and there was a lot of that last night.
Your talk about the back line and about Matthews. Let me give you 2 other names who helped out Matthews last night. Wesley Dacus, George Campbell. And while Matthews was holding his own at moments, there would be the times where we've seen George Campbell continue to develop, and he would go over and help and shield to make sure that nothing would happen offensively. Wesley Dacus, a tremendous match last night, and he would do the same things. It's about how these guys are learning with each other as a group and how it's flowing better when it comes to how they're interacting with each other and covering and making sure that things are going to be as harmless offensively when Atlanta United 2's on defense as possible. So I would point out Campbell and Dacus as much as you have with Matthews, and then Lawrence White continues to impress as well. So I like what's being developed at the back. You mentioned Jackson Conway. So it was good to see Kanakimana help out. Like I said, we're used to seeing him just absolutely sprinting and leaving everything in his wake offensively. But to see the other parts of his game developing last night, that was just as special to see. So you're seeing development from a bunch of different guys taking hold. And last night was another example of that for the twos.
Yeah, it's an important part of it. The overall development is what you want to see game to game. And you saw some of that last night. You also saw a lot of yellow cards. It was a weird match in the way it was called by Marco Vega. You had 9 fouls committed by Charlotte, 22 from Atlanta, and it did not feel like that kind of match. You saw 5 yellow cards for Atlanta, 2 for Charlotte. Jack Metcalf saw a straight red at the end in some kind of chaos that we never got a good look at. None of the cameras picked up what happened off the ball. There was an incident where Kane Kamana had a player go over top of him, Abdoulaye Mansali, and he was down, landed very hard. Referee stopped the play to get Mansali checked on, and then off the ball on the other side, that was on the near side from where we were, on the other side of the field, equal with the 18, you look over and you see Nicky Jackson, forward for Charlotte, kind of doubled over and then goes to a knee, and you don't know what happened. Charlotte players are yelling at the AR, then yelling at the referee, and ultimately it's a red card to Jack Metcalf. Have no idea what happened there. Nicky Jackson saw a yellow in that situation as well. I believe that's where... No, maybe not Hernandez. I thought there was another yellow. It might have been Hernandez to Atlanta in that situation. It was a mess. And then the
Lawrence
referee...
Wyke.
Was it Wyke who got it there? I thought Wyke might have gotten it.
Yeah, Hernandez got his in the 89th. Wyke was 90 plus 5 to go with Jackson in the scrum.
There you go. No idea what happened. No idea what he did. So we couldn't really tell you. But the important thing that is there now is Wyke, Conway, Metcalf, Hernandez, all missing the next match. Yellow card accumulation and red cards. So that's going to be interesting this weekend in North Carolina. But the way the match ended after that, so that was early in stoppage time. There was supposed to be 3 minutes. And then it's a drop ball for Charlotte based off where the referee had stopped it. That was correct. Charlotte plays it long. Atlanta then has a chance to break 3-on-3, and the goalkeeper took the free kick about 40 yards from goal out on the right side. So Atlanta has a chance to break as they clear it. Referee blows the final whistle because he wants to get out of there without anybody else kicking anything off. And no one was happy with that one, especially Atlanta United 2 players and staff. And then you had more arguing and barking back and forth. And somewhere between Atlanta and Charlotte, Enzo Martinez is still arguing with Marco Vega because he did it the whole match.
He's got Marco Vega's cell number, and he's calling him up.
He does, I'm sure. And his brother Alex is chirping in the background, too.
Right there with him.
Look, I like Enzo Martinez a lot, and we were having some fun with Enzo's ongoing conversation with Vega last night and Alex joining in. Those two guys are great for this league. They're great, talented players. I think Enzo should still be with the Colorado Rapids, to be honest. He was one of their better players last season in a bad year, and he could be there, I think, if he wanted to. But I do think that Alex... some other players in this team, like Jorge Herrera, who has been in Charlotte for a long time, played with the Eagles before the Independents. Those are guys who take the idea of playing for Charlotte very seriously. And it's guys like that allow a team like the Independents to go on these runs that they do. Charlotte's a good team to watch, and they're so much better now under Jeffries and the style that they want to play. It's a team that, when you're looking for a random game on ESPN Plus, you're flipping around, Charlotte's a good one to settle on week after week.
And you hear these, if you don't follow Charlotte readily, but you hear these names, and you mentioned them with Enzo and Jorge Herrera, hat-trick Herrera, and you hear the legends and you hear all of the conversations, but to see them do what they've been able to do once McGinnis was let go and Mike Jeffries came back down from the front office. I mean, they're a tough bunch, but Atlanta United 2 last night exposed them at the back with a couple of points with their speed going up against guys like Robertson, Tico, and they got exposed on the 2 goals. So if you're looking for a fun run right now, Charlotte's on it. But casual viewing, I would agree with you. Go with the Independents right now, but still a lot to take away from the Stripes last night in a 2-2 draw.
Yeah, good night for Atlanta United too, on the whole. Lots of good things for Stephen Glass to talk about with his young squad afterwards. Let's take a break. Let's try to help John with his fantasy team right after this.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yep, he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm gonna let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service Ad Council and your state forester.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
This is what matters. This is beyond X's and O's. This is the difference mutual respect makes. This is what character looks like. This is what defines us in Georgia. This is sportsmanship. School sports. It's not the outcome that matters most, but the way the games are played. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinsky of Apolinsky & Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
Welcome back. Soccer Down here, July 25th. Let's get into a MLS fantasy update. Thanks to our sponsor, Jason Wright of the Jason Wright Agency. Make sure you're following him. Jason Wright Agency on Facebook, Jason Wright AGEN on Twitter. Last week, top points in the Open League. For whom the bellow tolls, 185 points. Second in the Atlanta United official league. Check Joseph, 178 points. Joseph Martinez uses the Oxford comma, 176 points after a rough first week. Open League standings, Joseph Martinez uses the Oxford comma, has moved into third place, 665 points. Don't var me, bro, 683. And Check Joseph, 689. Very tight race at the top there, 6-point difference. In the Pro Rel League, we're into the Clausura season after the Apertura season was finished in the spring. You've got three managers that are undefeated. Black Star FC was undefeated, but they lost to Port City FC, and the commissioner included the term embarrassing when he reported the loss to us. So I'm just saying Black Star FC. That's what the commish said. Still undefeated. Don't var me, bro, Cam Do Attitude, and Blackhall Bombers. Here's your tips for Week 21, straight from the desk of the commissioner. There's no double games, nobody on a bye. It's a normal game week. It starts Friday. The commish is looking at players with the following teams because of their matchups. NYCFC, New England Revolution. He says New Jersey. I'll say the Red Bulls. Minnesota United, and the San Jose Earthquakes. So check those players out. They've got the matchups. We'll go through the schedule quickly here in just a second. Also, and this is a special announcement from the commissioner, winners of the Spring League, they will be receiving limited edition Atlanta United scarves. In the Open League, Joseph Martinez uses the Oxford comma, won by 16 points, about 1% higher in the whole compilation of the spring season. So Joseph Martinez uses the Oxford comma, will win a limited edition Atlanta United scarf. And in the Pro Rel League, in the Apertura season, soccer-specific fantasy team, 12-0-3 record, which was tied with second place, Cam Do Attitude, but soccer-specific fantasy team had a plus 42 point differential. over can-do attitude and plus 180 over opponents for the season. Goldmine had a huge point differential, plus 265, but had some tricky results go against them. So, soccer-specific fantasy team is your Pro Rel League winner. Joseph Martinez uses the Oxford comma, is your Open League winner, and they will be receiving limited edition Atlanta United scarves from the commish himself.
Far out.
Jason Wright of the Jason Wright Agency. Jason Wright Agency on Facebook. Jason Wright, AGEN on Twitter. All right. No double match weeks, no weirdness with that to consider. So it's all just straight up game this weekend. Starts tomorrow, 7:30, NYCFC and Sporting Kansas City. At Yankee Stadium, the commish says you should be looking at NYC players. I'm a little higher on Sporting Kansas City than most. I keep expecting them to start to get it right, and we've seen glimpses, but then you see a big slip-up like last week. Yankee Stadium's a tough place to play. I don't think it's going to be a blowout here, but NYCFC winning, yeah, I could easily see that. Players to look for, I don't know, maybe defense? I would maybe lean defense here, maybe a Sean Johnson in goal, because I don't expect Sporting Kansas City to score very much. It's probably where my head's at there. The late night, we'll talk LAFC in Atlanta more and more, but player-wise, I think there'll be goals in that one. So attacking players from either team, I think, are pretty good plays here. New England is hosting Orlando. Now, one thing about Orlando this season is they have been pretty good defensively. They've only given up 29 goals in 22 matches. New England, though, lately has been getting goals, and they've added Bo up top. I kind of like New England attackers here. I don't know if they're the best plays yet, but a Carlos Heel, a Bo, a Teal Bunbury, those are all pretty solid options. I don't think there's going to be a ton of goals in it, though.
Juicebox Purveyors have that one at minus 175 to New England.
Okay, well, we're not going to get full deep into all that, too. Let's try to focus on the fantasy side of it here, because we're trying to help your fantasy team, not your juice boxes right now. We can only do one thing at a time. Red Bulls hosting Columbus. Yes, I agree with the commish. Red Bulls players here would be a good play. I don't trust Columbus at all.
Nope.
Now, the question is which Red Bulls players would be a good play, because it hasn't necessarily been consistent. The player that has maybe been the most consistent is Brian White. But Bradley Wright Phillips is starting to get healthy. Is this a game where Bradley Wright Phillips gets a game to start to get going again? Or do you stick with Brian White? I would lean to sticking with Brian White. Daniel Royer's the other one that I think he's the most important player for the New York Red Bulls. He's got 7 goals on the season. Not sure what his fantasy number is. I would assume he's fairly affordable. This
9.1.
might be a good play for him. Yeah, that's not bad. This would be a pretty good play for a Daniel Royer. I like Red Bulls players in that one against Columbus.
Okay. I've got Kamar Lawrence in my lineup currently.
That's possible. I mean, I don't expect Columbus to score a whole lot. So, yeah, that can work. Chicago and D.C. D.C. on the road in Chicago. I don't know if there's going to be a lot of fantasy points in this one, period. It feels like a 0-0, 1-1, 1-0. Not much in it. I would lean to DC winning it. So if you wanted to look at DC defenders, and especially a DC defender like a Hara, who does get forward and pop some assists, that might be a good play here, because you get a little bit of the double whammy of them contributing potentially to a goal, but probably factoring into a clean sheet.
Well, Juicebox Purveyors are different on you on that one.
What
you might DC United plus 320.
That's a little surprising.
Chicago minus 138.
That's very surprising. Okay. FC Dallas hosting RSL Saturday, 8 o'clock. From a fantasy perspective here, RSL did play a good number of players in Leagues Cup. They didn't play a 100% first choice lineup, but it was a strong lineup. Dallas didn't play in Leagues Cup. They're at home. I would lean to Dallas here. I would lean to them winning it, and from a fantasy perspective, I would lean to them getting some goals. Salt Lake's given up 30 this year in 21 matches. It's actually not as bad as it feels like they've been defensively. Dallas, it's hard to pick who with them. That's always the issue with this team because Dominic Bocci's got 6 goals. Jesus Ferreira's got 6 goals. Paxton Pomacall's got 2 goals, but he's contributing. Michael Barrios only 2. It's kind of a committee approach to scoring for Dallas, and that doesn't play well with fantasy soccer.
No, I had Gruezo put in as a salary cap squeeze in there.
You did?
Yeah, because I had
Carlos
6.5
Gruezo
left.
on your team.
Yeah.
Are you sure about that?
All right, so what am I not paying attention to here?
You have Carlos Gruezo on your fantasy team. Are you expecting him to play this weekend?
Yeah, he's got a green dot next to him.
Carlos Gruezo from FC Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You might want to double-check that one. I'm just saying. You might want to double-check that one because I don't think he's playing this weekend. For Dallas, anyway. Houston hosting Seattle. Houston had some disappointment in the Leagues Cup last night. They're still washing off the beer or sodas that were thrown at them. And they get Seattle coming to town. Houston's good at home, but I don't know if they're going to be able to handle a Seattle team that I believe will come in a little angry after losing to Portland. A little bit of a chip on your shoulder. Nicolas Ladero is a player I think you always have to consider. Raul Ruidiaz, he's got 8 goals on the year. He missed time during Copa America. Another player you got to consider. I think there will be goals in this one. And so if you're looking at goals, you're looking on the Houston side too, at Ellis, at Manotas, at Memo Rodriguez especially. I think Memo is a player that you can probably get for a good price as well.
7.2.
That's a really good price. Minnesota and Vancouver. Anybody you want to pick from Minnesota, do it. Vancouver's broken.
Popara
They're
and
awful.
Finley.
They're just awful. They're just bad. So Minnesota players all day, every day. Anybody. You want defenders? Cool. You want attackers? Cool. Go for it. Don't pick a Whitecaps player. No. Montreal hosting Philadelphia. Man, Philly has impressed me in some of these moments on the road where you kind of look at them and you're like, all right, are you for real? Are you legit? And they've delivered. They beat Montreal 3-0 earlier this year, back in April in Chester, PA. Now, can they go to Stade Saputo and do it? Montreal, it feels like, has their backs against the wall with their loss to Columbus. They've had some other losses, the loss at home to Toronto. I keep waiting for desperation to kick in, and I like Safir Taider a lot. He's a player that I would always consider in these moments, and I think even if Montreal loses this match, he's still a player that you can look at that can get you points in a fantasy perspective. I think he can get you goals too. But from a Philadelphia perspective, it's another team that, you know, kind of spreads the goals around a bit. Marco Fabian with a nice one off a set piece. David Accam, maybe. Or no, sorry, not David Accam. He scored 4 earlier this year. Sorry. Ilsinho off the bench. It's a little hard to figure out who to isolate on when it comes to Philadelphia.
And what about the return of Piatti?
I mean, kind of want to see it. What is the update out of Montreal on Nacho Piatti? Do you have one?
Saves the day for Impact in 1-0 win over York FC.
Okay. Is he going to be able to turn it around on the weekend?
And that's the
after
larger
playing
question.
Midweek? I'd stay away from it. I think that goal and that saving the day last night will get people excited about him in fantasy this weekend. After the long absence, I'd wait a little bit. I would hold off there. I think Philadelphia gets the win, and I think Philadelphia gets some goals. I wouldn't really touch defenders in that one from a fantasy perspective. I would pick defenders for Toronto. They're hosting Cincinnati. I think they'll do fine at home, barring 7 changes to the lineup, although you probably need to make 7 to get back to the lineup you should have had. So anyway,
really?
Toronto's got to take care of business here. And
Omar and Westberg.
I will join the national pundits on this one and expect Toronto to get something done. I think they have to. And they will take care of business in a big way against Cincinnati, who just doesn't have any real goal scorers at all.
Minus 350.
Yeah, that's about right. Take your pick. Pozuelo, there is an ankle injury. That's why he didn't play in the last one against Houston. Keep an eye on his availability. But Josie Altidore should be back in the starting lineup. You've got a lot of players to pick from here with Toronto. So I think have at it with Toronto players. Have at it with Minnesota players. Those are your 2 defaults if you're stuck and you're not sure where to go with anything. The last game of the weekend, or last 2, San Jose, Colorado, Portland, and LA Galaxy. Both are going to be pretty even, I think. I think Colorado will give San Jose a game, but they should be able to pull away and get goals. And they've been getting goals and getting chances and getting shots in recent matches. I think they'll continue that, but I do think Colorado will get a goal. So I don't know if San Jose defenders are going to be the way to go, but you can take your pick from the attack. On the flip side with Portland and LA, it's in Portland. Galaxy had the big emotional win over LAFC. How do they kind of manage that and go to Portland? Because the Galaxy have had some bad moments this season in stuff like this. So I kind of want to see him prove it. I would lean to Portland players, and I would definitely default to Brian Fernandez.
All right. And then what about Atlanta and LAFC? Did we really get into that one?
I mean, from a fantasy perspective, like attackers.
Yeah.
Just whatever attackers you want to take. Vela,
Okay.
Rossi, Diamande, Joseph, probably Pitti. Probably. Because I think Vasquez with the adductor issue, you're going to have to be a little concerned there. If you want to take a flyer on a cheap player, Vasquez would be one that you could take a flyer on from a fantasy perspective. But all of your star attackers, I think, are in play here.
All right. So here's what I have. Westberg in net.
Okay.
Backline. Metanier, Opara, Omar, and Kamar Lawrence.
Okay. Yeah, that'll work.
Midfield, and some of this was salary dependent. Carlos Heel, Ethan Finley, Shea Salinas, Gustav Svensson.
I don't know if I'd go Svensson.
Because 6.4 was what I had. 6.5
sure
was what I had
options.
left. Joseph and Vela up top, captaining Joseph.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, Svensson would be the one I would drop. I think you can probably find something better than that because he just doesn't give you a whole lot from a points perspective. He's kind of there, and I think the Houston match is a little tricky for them on the road. I'd stay away from it.
And obviously the reason that I have Svensson is because I would be waiting for Carlos Gruezo to catch a flight from Augsburg to get back in time.
There's that. Yes. Don't think that's going to happen. Just assuming. MLS might want to update their fantasy rosters a little bit so they don't catch people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, maybe they want to catch people. Maybe that's why they're doing it.
Maybe that's what it is. You gotta stay up on MLS, but they probably should take care of that. MLS fantasy folks behind the scenes. What do we have on the Twitters? We got a couple minutes before we take a break, and we get Felipe Cardenas on the line.
We do. We have Twittery stuff. The ghost of Yamil Assad at M. Biederman 2019.
We're being haunted by a ghost?
Apparently so, or at least M. Biederman 2019 is.
All right. Well, no, he's saying he is the ghost of Yamil Assad. So, all right, what's the ghost got to say?
1. What does the head coach do while teams are warming up? I've never seen Tata or Frank de Boer on the field a la football, and they don't seem to have media responsibilities. Are they just enjoying a cold one in the locker room?
Depends. Everybody's different. Sometimes they're, kind of preparing things in the locker room. Sometimes they're maybe looking over something last. Sometimes it's just a chance to honestly just chill out for a few minutes. Just be by yourself for a few minutes before you get into all this. That's why you have a staff. I mean, you've already went through it with your staff, what you want players to do in the warm-up, how you want the warm-up to be. I mean, by this point in the season, it's kind of automatic as to how it looks. You might see some tweaks here and there, but no, there's nothing for them to do there either, because you're not going around coaching anybody up in that moment. You've already given more than likely your pregame speech. Everybody's a little different in that regard. Like Pep Guardiola likes to give his pregame speech from a team talk perspective before they even get to the stadium. Like he'll do it in the hotel before they get on the buses and go to the stadium. Others will do it in the stadium. Some managers like to have the players come into a separate room. Some managers will go into the locker room to speak to them. Everybody's different. Everybody's got their thing. But I think generally in those moments, the manager, after arriving, after getting everything set up, after having any conversations you need to have, after having any team talks that you want to have, depending on how you like your timing, that's kind of their moment to, some will change, some will take a shower, some will grab a bite to eat, some will just be by themselves for a little bit and just get ready for all of it, because that pressure kicks off for the manager when you bring the team out, when you get to the sideline, when you get to your technical area. You got to be ready for that. And I think that time when the teams are warming up, it's almost like the manager's warming up mentally as well.
Then the second question from the ghost of Emil Assad.
Okay.
How are new signings best integrated into a team? More film work, more small-sided games to get them used to each other's movement, just toss them into the deep end? It seems like with so much money invested, there have to be some best practices to follow.
Yeah, it probably depends on the player and depends on familiarity. I'm sure there's a lot of video. Usually players will do a lot of that on their own. Like when a signing is either imminent or about to happen, they'll check out the team they're going to get a sense of how they play and where they might fit into it and those types of things. I think a lot of players who have come here have talked about that they did their homework before they did the deal. So they kind of know where they could fit, who they're playing with, how they play, those sorts of things. You get a lot of small-sided stuff in general. That's become more of the norm in training for teams that play in the way Atlanta United does. A lot of rondos, it's kind of, I don't know what the equivalent would be, keep away kind of things, where it's 5v2 or 6v2 or 6v3 with different aims in it. That's a really good way to just kind of, one, bond, one, get your technical skills up, one, get activated, but also it can be a lot of fun for teams because you get a lot of trash talking and you get a lot of, like, oh, we're gonna nutmeg you, and we're gonna try to nutmeg you, we're gonna try to split you. If you get split, you're gonna have to drop and give me push-ups, those types of things where it's fun. All that is important, but then once you get into the bigger session where you're working on something tactical, where you are on the field, who you're around, those are kind of the final moments. So it's a process, and it probably depends on the player and what their role is going to be. And every team's a little different. I think the teams that have their new signings get into the squad quickly and contribute quickly, those are the ones who are doing it the right way. And I think Atlanta's had a lot of success with that. Eric Remedi last year, Emerson Heineman this year, Justin Merrim this year, really hit the ground running. And that's a credit to the staff for integrating these players. It's a credit to the players that are here as well for welcoming these new faces and bringing them into the group as well from just a personality standpoint. Good questions, Ghost of Emil Assad. Hopefully you don't haunt us later, but looking forward to it. Looking forward to talking to ghosts more often. We're going to take a break, get Felipe Cardenas from The Athletic on the line right after this.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yep, he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm gonna let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service, Ad Council, and your state forester.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
This is what matters. This is beyond X's and O's. This is the difference mutual respect makes. This is what character looks like. This is what defines us in Georgia. This is sportsmanship. School sports. It's not the outcome that matters most, but the way the games are played. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinski of Apolinski & Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
You're listening to Soccer Down Here daily on SDH Networks, a division of OSG Sports. Find us at Soccer Down Here on Facebook and Twitter. The time is now the top of the hour. Peep, y'all.
Welcome back. Hour number 2, SDH for July 25th. It's a Thursday, and the Gold Cup is over, so we have Felipe Cardenas on the line with us. What's up, Felipe?
He's back home.
Hey, guys. What's going on? Happy to be here, as always.
Yes. I've got a question for you. We're going to get into a tweet you just put out about the twos and kind of development. We'll get into all that. We'll get into LAFC. But I've got a question for you that I've been kind of mulling over for a little while as I've watched a lot more Teise lately and the way they cover the game in Argentina and getting ready for the upcoming Superliga season. I'm fascinated by some of the differences in the way that Argentine TV, Argentine media, I think Colombian media and Colombian TV would be in a similar boat as this. Brazil probably the same as well. And how they cover their domestic leagues in the universe of the soccer world compared to the European leagues. I don't think they try to say that their domestic leagues are better, but they cover them on a very, I think, equal footing, an equal plane, and talk about them in a very serious way. And that doesn't always happen here in the U.S. with Major League Soccer. It's a very interesting comparison for me as I've watched it more and more about just the seriousness and the way it's covered and the way their local leagues are thought of compared to the big leagues in Europe versus how MLS is covered and thought of versus those leagues. What's your take on that? What's your thought on that? Because you have more experience, consuming more of this than I do, and how the local leagues in South America are covered versus MLS and how it's covered.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a cultural one, right? And I think that's as MLS continues to grow, develop, bring in players from South America, what that's going to result in is those shows that you're talking about starting to cover MLS. And at some point, just P.T. Martinez doing interviews, with guys that he knows in Argentina, journalists that he knows that he can call on his, he has them in his WhatsApp, and he can just give them a call or vice versa. He did an interview earlier this week as well for ESPN FC Argentina, which, if you guys are patient with me, I talk a little bit about it in the athletic soccer piece that I wrote last night that should post this morning. But
excellent plug.
Nicely done. Very nice.
But to your point, I think let's start with Argentina. And you mentioned Colombia. You're right. I grew up watching this. It's part of my background, and I think I use that today in my job as a journalist every day. What I've seen, what I've learned, what I continue to read, and the way that the journalists in South America cover not just players but teams and leagues. I would say that in Colombia, quickly, is that I think it's much more of a kind of a formal journalism in the way that they cover soccer and the domestic league and international. Like, the journalism is very, very polished, They're very experienced journalists that have been doing this for years and years and years. It looks like very newsy, and I mean, not to say that other countries don't do this, but it's just like very fact based. And sometimes like the younger generations coming up like are kind of thrown off by that. I think they like what they're seeing in Argentina, which they're starting to develop and kind of speak to the younger generation, the millennial, fan base. If you get on like TNT Argentina has an Instagram page that's it's pretty cool. I mean, they have like this like a segment that's like 15 seconds of just like, hey, here's what's happening, and it's this young guy kind of hipster talking about like the latest transfers or what he's heard. So I think they know they're attracting different consumers and fans, and they know they're trying to meet the fan where they are. So obviously that's on their mobile phone and through social. What I like about Argentina that I continue to see is the relationship that the journalists kind of form with players. And that's, I think, depending on your viewpoint, I think in America, in MLS, that's, I wouldn't say it's frowned upon, but it's not traditional. Like you can have, I think you develop sources, journalists who develop sources within the team, within the league. What I noticed even covering Mexico is that the Mexican journalists, in order to get access, because they don't have the same access as we have, they have to develop relationships with players and coaches, and not always interview them when they see them. You might run into them in an elevator, and you don't take out your recorder; you just have a conversation. But that's reporting. That's developing a source, or that's just getting a feel for what's happening. So I think Argentina does that very well, and the journalists are able to grab a player immediately after a game is over, and they talk to them in a way that is different than the way I think American journalists speak to athletes. It's less formal. It's more about a feeling of a particular match or a moment. And players really, I think they embrace that. They appreciate that type of reporting. Now, not everyone does it. When I asked PT Martinez the day after he gave the interview to Fox Argentina, he spoke to the local media here in Atlanta immediately afterwards. And my first question was really about like how. Basically, I told him like, listen, I know that those guys. The guys. These are guys that well. These are journalists that well, and I wanted him to talk about that, and he did. He's like, yeah, those are guys that I know are the type of journalists that want to see us succeed. They want to see the players succeed. So what that tells you is, yes, I think Argentina does a great job of covering the sport in kind of this new modern age, but there are still sections and segments and factions within the journalists that the players see as like, whoa, hold on, those guys are toxic. They're just after, a rumor, or they're going to create a headline. And so I think that's in MLS, we don't really get that. And that's that big media piece that I wrote about the locker room access. I think it touched on that the players come here to America and they're not sure what they're going to get. Why is this guy here in my locker room? Why do I have to come speak to them after training? What do they want? And so they're starting to learn that, here in America, it's like we're given the access. We're here. We're promoting the league. Everyone, whether we're reporting something good or bad, MLS is at a stage that this is all about development of the sport and of the league in America. So that's not the case in Argentina in these leagues. These are 100-year-old leagues. But I think they're continuously innovating in the way that they cover the sport.
Well, and you mentioned innovating, and it's just these days it's that balance of the traditional, and by that I mean the journalistic, buttoned up, okay, here's how this is going to be. It's going to be in a show in a 30-minute format, the stuff that we're used to seeing, and then having to balance that out with the younger generations who get it through Snapchat and Insta Story and all of these other rapid fire ways, and trying to figure out how to disseminate the information, still give the journalistic elements in one lane, I guess, and then the newer elements and the newer approaches in the other lanes of traffic. So how different has it become with all of these lanes that have been added with social media and immediacy these days, or is it any different?
Yeah, I think it's a lot different. You're as a journalist, you're having to understand what your readers and what your fans like, how they're consuming media. And I think not to self promote, but I think that's what the Athletic, that's part of their business model. They understand that we're in a very digital on demand society. The type of reporting that we do is a little bit deeper or feature based, but it's within the environment of a digital format and one where the experience has to be one that we understand that the readers will appreciate and they'll come back to, and that they can curate and customize and personalize their experience based on the teams that they follow or the authors that they like. And so, I think in Argentina and Brazil, even, there's so many outlets that what they're doing is starting to tailor their reporting to, like I said before, to where the fan is, like where the audience is. And that's why you see so much like daily, like the number of tweets. They'll just give you like a 30 second preview of what they're talking about on CNN Argentina, CNN, which is affiliated with the TNT part of it. You can watch TYC Sports if you have Fanatiz. You can download that app here in the US. You can watch TYC Sports. You can watch that all day if you want. You can watch TYC Argentina all day and see how they do it. They have guys in the studio, and then they've got guys kind of roaming around the club, and they'll just catch guys walking out to their car and be like, "Hey, man, like, what's going on?" and the players,
really interesting the way
and the players are like, if the players know like that this is a guy that's not here to try to filter something or
jump,
then they're cool, and I think I love that about that type of coverage, because in order for the journalist to be in that position, he has to earn that trust. It's not just because I have a recording device and I write. You have to earn the trust that players have to know. The club has to understand, that it's okay to let your players walk to their cars and maybe do a brief interview. I don't think that happens in MLS in American sports. There are a lot of parameters around access, even though we get tons of access and it's excellent. There are a lot of parameters around that.
That's interesting. There is a lot of access, but there's not the same type of access.
No, right, and so that changes how you cover. It changes perhaps the relationships you have, the types of questions you ask, and it just makes for a very interesting kind of ecosystem that starts in South America, is starting to creep its way into Mexico, because Mexican journalists don't have the same type of access as we do, and so everyone is kind of fighting the same battle of like, how do I get my story out?
We could go into this stuff all day, and I'm sure we'll come back to it again, and I definitely want to. But let's get into the big game tomorrow night, Atlanta and LAFC. Joe Bost has a question and wanted to hear your take, Felipe, on what the 11 could look like, because we've seen the move to the 3-5-2, and it's been successful. You also don't really have a lot of options at outside of Franco Escobar right now, so it's been a little bit by necessity as well. But LAFC presents a very different kind of challenge.
Yeah, and to Joe, excellent question. I'll tell Joe, watch my Twitter, watch the Athletic Soccer's Twitter today, because that's part of the story. Is like, yes, formations are. I've said it several times. I think in the U.S., speaking of how we cover the game, we love to, to focus on formations, right? What is a formation? But there's much more to that, and I think that's part of the story that I wrote last night. But yeah, I think what you're seeing is from Atlanta United, it's a versatile 3-5-2, because we know it can become a 5-3-2 very easily, and depending on the players that you have on the pitch and what the opponent's doing, you can kind of, I guess, tweak a little bit. But what we've seen and what the players have said after these last two matches against Houston and DC is that they feel a lot more comfortable in this in this type of setup. And I think we understand why, because you're seeing certain players in familiar roles. There's more space when you spread the field out. Players like just Nagby and Remedy and Hyman, who's done an excellent job of really covering for some big time players. Let's be honest. He didn't come in to start. He's not supposed to start. Okay. But he has, and he's performed well, and he's starting ahead of a player like, P.T. Martinez and Barca, who's injured. But even when they spread the field, a guy like him has a lot more space and can find a flank, can get forward. And so I think against LAFC, the question is, will Frank de Boer tinker again? What will the team's attitude and approach to a match away from Mercedes-Benz Stadium be? And it's not that they're not playing at Houston, they're not playing in Colorado, they're playing against the league leaders, and they're playing in Los Angeles. That's what I told PT after the game. You're going to Los Angeles, the city of stars. This is what it's a cliche, but these are the types of games where the stars need to show up. So, I think Frank de Boer needs to set his team up in order to allow those creative players to shine. And so I think, they have to be wary of LAFC's, midfield three. I think you saw against the Galaxy, though, that if you can neutralize that midfield, you can stay in the game. It was still a 3-2 game. I thought the penalty was somewhat iffy, but the Galaxy, for as much as even myself wrote about Bartolo Schelotto and he's not a tactician, and can he fit in MLS, and was he right fit for Atlanta United even? He got the tactics right against LAFC, and not only that, but he obviously was in his players' heads and told them, if we out-physical this team, which, let's be honest, the LAFC is a finesse team, and so if you out-physical them, if you go in harder on every tackle, if you let them know that I'm here every time you turn, you might get a win. And I think that's what the LA Galaxy did. And I think Atlanta has shown against some of their games against the New York Red Bulls that they can play that type of game too. So I just think it sets up for really a fascinating, tactical matchup. But it might be one of those games where no matter what the tactics are for the managers, once the players are out there in front of each other, they just might change everything.
When you go back and look at El Tráfico, I think that you see a weakness of LAFC was their intensity, and that was by their own admission. Elliot Beaven asks, what is LAFC's weakness? And I guess I'll just preface it by saying, do they have one in your mind?
Well, yeah, I think they have weaknesses. I think their back four is a big weakness. I'm happy to go, on a 2-footed tackle on Walker Zimmerman. I think he has a lot of potential. I think will be a U.S. men's national team defender. He'll be in the pool. Is he the future center back, which a lot of people have hyped him as that? I don't know. I'm not sure. He did not look good against the Galaxy at all. The two center backs were, let's just be honest, they were bad. They were not able to even track Zlatan. How do you lose Zlatan? And so I think that was, for me, alarming to see the two center backs for LAFC completely just outwitted throughout the match. And I think what Schelotto again did very well is that he used Alvarez, the Argentine, as kind of like this, almost like a false 9, false 8. And so he was able to, he was always kind of dangerous around the box, but he also shadowed Atuesta. That confused Atuesta. By confusing Atuesta, you confuse your center backs, because that part of the field needs to be in sync. And so I think that's the number one weakness, is the back four. Can you get at them? Can you force them to make decisions? Can you get them out of their comfort zone? If you can neutralize a player like Atuesta, and who the game kind of goes through him, I'm sorry. And I thought, again, he was shadowed throughout the match by Alvarez. It was difficult for him to get on the ball. And then he found himself defending a lot more. So, I think Atlanta has players that can do that. They have quick players, aggressive players, vertical players that can kind of run at a central midfielder and force him to make some decisions. So, yeah, I think that's where I would be looking at. How do you get the center backs to to get out of position and maybe track a Barco. I think Barco will play and be a difference maker on Friday night. And then can you force Atuesta to get out of his game and force maybe an Anthony Kay, which very good player and has had a great year, but maybe force him to be the guy that's distributing and trying to create, because that's not his forte as well.
LAFC's an interesting one because I think when they control a match, they're dominant, but they're not a team that I think handles being in the lesser side of a match. They don't handle when the opponent controls the match well. And so far what we've seen from Atlanta United this season is they want to control matches, but in matches where they haven't, they've had more success than LAFC. And I'm curious to see how this plays out in the first 15, 20 minutes. You know, who takes the control of this match? Who has more of the ball? Who is dictating the match? And how the other responds. I feel a little bit better about Atlanta responding in that moment, but Bob Bradley had to take some lessons away from their loss to the Galaxy.
For sure. I'm sure Bob Bradley has not slept well after that match because he got a little bit outcoached. I thought he was probably very confident in the way his team was set up because they played so well. But the script has been written for other teams to follow up on and understand how you can match up and face LAFC. Even kind of the not bottom table, but like a less dynamic MLS team can essentially say, okay, we saw what the Galaxy did. We don't have slots on, but we have some physical players and maybe we can get at them. I think Atlanta, to your point, Jason, about who's the team that comes out and really imposes themselves on the match. Like, I think the pressure is more on Atlanta United. And because this is after this 2019, we expect LAFC to be that team, to be the league leaders, to be the team that plays kind of beautiful football and really puts the opponents on the back foot right away. For Atlanta United, that's what we were accustomed to the last two seasons. This season, they have not played that way. They've been inconsistent in making the game, as Frank de Boer says. And I think this week, and as a follow-up to their last two performances, and to what the players have been saying this week, is that that's what they want to do. That's the internal battle that they've been having. Why aren't we as aggressive away from home? How do we get back to that identity of the team that they were the last two seasons, that when no matter what pitch they played on, they played a certain way and they really took it to their opponents. So I think the onus and that responsibility is on the defending champions to be the team that everyone thinks they can be. This isn't me because I live in Atlanta saying that. I truly believe they're the best team in MLS, Atlanta United. We can argue all day about it, but I'm pretty convinced, based on a top to bottom roster experience, that they are still the best team in the league, and they need to show that in these big games.
I'm glad you mentioned that experience because I want to touch on that, and that's been something when it comes to LAFC that I've been looking for since they came into the league, is how they handle these big moments. And when you look at the series with the Galaxy and you look at how they fared last season, it's been lacking. And it's a little surprising because of how good they can be when they are good. And they're amazing when they're good, but it feels like it's all or nothing with them, where with Atlanta United last season, especially maybe midway through, they started to figure out how to grind out results. And we've seen a little bit more of that this year. LAFC's never found that gear.
Right. And I think that was the story of kind of the end of the season for Atlanta United last, in 2018, that they were able to kind of leave their dynamic part of their game. They were able to put that to a side and really, take out the claws, the garra, and win games like the ugly way. Now, but they were still an attacking team. They still were dangerous, and the teams that like an NYCFC at Yankee Stadium in the playoffs that was able to, force Atlanta back, they were still very concerned with what they had to, prepare for if Atlanta countered on them. So I think that's the difference. Like, because Atlanta they're still a dangerous team, but I think teams are like, okay, they're allowing us to come at them a little bit. So that changes the mentality of an opponent, changes the mentality of Atlanta United. But LAFC, I agree. It reminds me of a little bit of Atletico Madrid and Real Madrid, where even though Atletico Madrid has had some tremendous years, oh my gosh, guys, Nairo Quintana, the Colombian, is breaking away in the Tour de France, just letting you know. But even though that Atletico Madrid has grown so much under Simeone, and I think they're going to continue to be a top of the table team, there are times where when they would face Real Madrid or face Barcelona, they were still, especially against Real Madrid, still that little brother. They were still the guy that, I can hold my hand out and you can punch all you want. You're just punching air. And that's what LAFC reminds me of when they play like the Galaxy, for instance. The last two games, they still look like the little brother. They're still the best team, I guess, this year, and they're obviously leading the Supporters' Shield race, by a significant margin right now. But to your point, Jason, I don't know. Can they take punches and give punches and take a punch, give it back, take a jab, give an uppercut, and win some tough games.
Cauldron of the MLS playoffs, because that's the great equalizer in this league, where you have teams that we see in leagues around the world that are like LAFC, where they're very dominant, but man, when they get punched in the mouth, they kind of shrink, but they're able to do enough to win a league. The playoffs change that approach in MLS a bit.
Oh, sure it does.
You've got to be able to grind.
And there's no margin for error now. There's absolutely no margin for error with single elimination. Which I think when we saw that change, for one, I was like, okay, well now I think you might see a lower seeded team. You just know how they're going to set up. They're going to park the bus. They're going to try to get through, on a last minute goal, or get through on PKs, like whatever it may be. But that still forces teams like Atlanta United and LAFC, which are supposed to get by defensive teams and figure that out, to do just that. And so LAFC still has not been able to demonstrate kind of that mental fortitude to get through, like the type of games that we've seen Atlanta and the New York Red Bulls play in, where the coaches just throw the tactics out the window, and you have to be the stronger team mentally. You have to be more streetwise than the other. If you see a teammate get hacked down, then you have to know, okay, I'm going to take out the next guy. It's that type of game. And you have players like Jeff Relenowitz, who I think, these games against the Red Bulls, he probably wakes up in the morning of the game, he's like, okay, I'm getting a yellow today. And so that does LAFC have players like that? I don't know. They're a finesse team. They're a finesse team that I think if you can get at them physically and ask questions of them, then I think you're going to be fine. But if you sit back and let them be who they are, you might be in trouble.
When you look at this matchup this weekend, I know everybody is drawn to the shiny objects of a Joseph, of a Vela, of a Rossi. Give me a fire truck. Give me a foot soldier. Give me a Lincoln Logs setup. One of those kind of gifts under the tree that you're going to be looking for. Who are those individuals that are really cool gifts, but not at first glance this weekend when you're watching this match?
Well, I think this type of match, and I'll stick with Atlanta United. I think for LAFC, I think you look at a player like Blessing. He was one of those guys against the Galaxy that even when the game got physical, he was able to kind of play through that, find the ball, be dangerous. And I think he's an experienced player in this league. And so, I think Blessing is a guy that in a midfield battle, like he might be a guy that can come out of this because that's where that might be where the game is won in that midfield. And Blessing is a guy that can, might force you to pay attention to him on both sides of the ball. It's not like he's a finisher, but he's a quick guy. He can get forward, and obviously he can track back and defend. For Atlanta United, I think this game sets up perfectly for a player like Leandro Gonzalez Pires. Like I just think it's a big moment for him. It really is. I think there's going to be a lot of action on his side. If they do line up in that type of 3-5-2, 5-3-2, if he's on the left side, which he normally is, that's where Carlos Vela really likes to hang out and camp out. De Boer might make a change as well and move Franco Escobar over there. I don't know yet, but I think that this type of matchup, regardless, this type of game, I think it just sets up for a player like LGP, an emotional player, an emotional leader. Can he keep his head, for 90? But in these types of games where it's about also playing, like we said before, being a team. Actually, we're talking offline about like just being a team that wants to play. He's that type of defender. He wants to be on the ball. He can create for you. He can tackle for you. He understands that, there's a lot more than just tactics to winning these games. So I'm going to be looking at him to see what type of performance he has, and if he's able to shut down him on his own, one of their key players like a Rossi or a Carlos Vela.
So before you tease everything you've got coming up, and it feels like you have about 10 different things coming up over at The Athletic.
Oh, gosh. Don't stress me out.
Make sure. You've probably already written it, so you're good. Make sure you go check out, if you haven't read the Tony Annan piece that Felipe did, make sure you go check that out. It plays off of a video that I saw back during the Generation Adidas Cup where Tony talked about the individual development program that the club has instituted specifically for a player like George Bello, but it's become a hallmark now of how Atlanta United wants to develop players. And I thought Felipe really did an amazing job of getting deeper into that and deeper into how difficult it is to develop a top player. I mean, every club in the world, you can talk about small clubs that develop players to the biggest clubs in the world that try to develop players. Everyone has their challenges, and Atlanta United is just like anybody else figuring it out. I think they're putting a lot of thought into it, and I thought Felipe kind of displayed a lot of that. That was a great piece. So, congratulations on writing just an amazing article on that.
Oh, thank you so much. It was a great interview with Tony. He was very open and candid about the lessons learned, and to be frank, the mistakes that he feels maybe have been made in how they approach homegrown signings and just player identification, which to me, he said, it takes a lot to do that. It takes about 6 to 7 years to develop a professional. And it's not 1 or 2 years in an academy or 1 or 2 years in USL. There's a lot that goes into it. And, Atlanta United is, like you said, there are teams all around the world that struggle in the same way. Even the biggest clubs that are known for developing players. Look at Barcelona. Like right now, La Masia is essentially like they're trying to bring that back. They're not developing the same types of players that they did in the past. I think what that shows you that sometimes it is generational. You have one great generation, just like Manchester United, the kind of that class of like Beckham, Scholes, Giggs, and then after that, you're really struggling to find professionals that can sustain themselves at a high level, like their brethren, like their previous classes. And so Atlanta United has a lot of work to do. I really truly believe that, and I think Tony was clear about that they're not here saying that we have all the answers, but to your point, they are making changes, and I think that IDP, the individual development program, is one that other teams around the league are like, hey, we want to do that. And so I think for a team that's just kind of in their 3rd, 4th year of academy development, I think that says a lot about Atlanta United and how that they know that they need to innovate, they need to be progressive, they need to learn from their first class of homegrowns as well. I thought it was very clear in what he told me. Like, did we give them too much money? Did we give them too much freedom? And I think we're seeing the results on the field that some of the players just aren't performing at the level that we all thought they would. And maybe it's not fair also to the players, to the young players, to think that because they're homegrowns, they sign a contract at the varsity with Arthur Blank next to him, that all of a sudden he's just going to be the next great player. There's a lot that goes into it that the players themselves have to understand. Frank DeBoer has been very adamant about that, what it takes to be a professional. I think I mentioned it on the show once where he said, do you come to training 10 minutes early and sit inside your car on your phone, or do you go inside and start working out? And I think that's what teams around MLS, and especially here in Atlanta United, that's what they want to see more of. And I think they're getting that from my conversations with Stephen Glass. Even I think just some of the younger players that are training with the twos and kind of taking their lumps and bruises with the twos are guys that really want to do it, and they're being exposed to some great players when they get to train with the first team. That's something that George Bello told me earlier in the year. It's like, and Carlton as well, that it's a privilege to go up there and train with Barco and Joseph and Miguel. So they're always going to have that, but they need to want more than just getting an opportunity to train.
So what all do you have coming up over at the Athletic over the next couple of days?
So, like I said today, hoping to get a story out. It's been filed, so we'll see what my editors say. But it's looking into the game on Friday, some of the kind of deeper line storylines that I've kind of captured throughout the week about Atlanta United, and again, I think the Tony Annan piece took a lot out of me, to be honest with you. It was a tough one to write because I had so much good material. So I'm going to stick to that. I'm working on a couple other pieces for some bigger projects that I can probably talk about in the coming weeks. So today I will not be leaving my home office, but I'm looking forward to writing today. I feel good.
Make sure you have your notifications on for Felipe Carr on Twitter for when this stuff drops, because it is definitely must-read material. Felipe, thanks for the time, as always.
All right, guys. Take care.
Be well.
Take a quick break, get back into the Thursday Thoughts section of the Twitter timeline right after this.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm gonna let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service Ad Council and your state forester.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
This is what matters. This is beyond X's and O's. This is the difference mutual respect makes. This is what character looks like. This is what defines us in Georgia. This is sportsmanship. School sports. It's not the outcome that matters most, but the way the games are played. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinski of Apolinski & Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
Welcome back. Soccer Down here, July 25th edition. It's Thursday Thoughts. You guys have thoughts. Let's hear those thoughts, John.
That they do. We had some of them answered when Felipe was on in the last segment. Dan Graham's letting everybody know about John Gallagher's interview on the Aberdeen FC website because of their match later today.
Very nice.
Quote, "I'm loving it so far." That's the direct quote from Gallagher.
Yeah, that's good. That's what you want out of a loan situation, is one that's a good fit and the player's enjoying their game and they're getting time. And John Gallagher's playing a good bit with Aberdeen. That's only going to serve him well.
Lewis Martin with something very nice to say to us this morning on the hashtag Thursday Thoughts. I'm an old school listener. I'm Peachtree Post old. I'm pre-Ivy old.
Yes.
I'm Jason being nice to John old.
Oh, wow. That's harsh.
I don't get to listen live often. I haven't missed an episode date on the show. Thanks for the information and the entertainment.
I'll try to be nicer, I guess. I'm sorry.
And Tafka put out a 5-alarm DEFCON notification because of Vasquez having an adductor injury.
That was
not
yesterday,
aware.
John. Do I have to be nice about that?
40
It was yesterday.
Yeah. Well, 45 minutes
happened.
ago, he says.
Yeah, but we talked about it during the show yesterday because Felipe tweeted it.
Yeah.
It happened yesterday at training. They're in Los Angeles right now.
There you go. The Colonel alerted us to something on the front page of the Statesboro Herald. He says, I know you know, but it makes the old Colonel feel good to see the beautiful game in the Borough Herald above the fold on the front of the sports section.
That's the stuff that's crazy about all this is, like, you've got big professional soccer matches and big amateur soccer matches happening in Statesboro, Georgia, and it's being talked about, and it's a big deal. That's happening in a lot of towns, not just in the South, but all over the country, and it's crazy. I mean, it's crazy when you think back 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10, 20 years ago. I mean, man, it's just a whole different world, and I think we're really only scratching the surface. And that's one reason I wanted to get into it with Felipe, just about the way the game's covered, because, you know, I look at a country like Argentina that has a proud history of a league and has clubs that have, you know, amazing traditions and are among the biggest clubs in the world. Your Boca Juniors, your River Plates, your Racings and San Lorenzo's as well, Independiente. All the grandes of Argentina have that type of stature and that clout. You're going to have that in the United States at some point. You're going to have your big mega clubs, and you're going to have your other clubs. And what I'm interested to see over time is how the game is covered here on the whole, where I think in countries in South America, they do a very good job of the balance between the domestic competition and what's going on in Europe or what's going on, you know, in other countries. That doesn't always happen here. You know, I look at a show like ESPN FC that is just all Europe and very little MLS, and a lot of times when it is something about MLS, it's a negative. That needs to change, and it's going to take time, and it's going to take the league here growing, and it's going to take better nights than they had last night, where you have two teams bounced out of Leagues Cup and one bounced out of the Canadian Championship. Yes, it has to continue to grow to get there, but I hope it does get there, and I hope we get to a point that in this country, what we're talking about is a Tormenta, is an Atlanta United, is a Greenville Triumph, is a Charleston Battery, more than we're talking about the clubs in Europe here. You know what I mean? Like, I hope that it gets there, and I think it will, and I think it's going to take time, and I think, you know, a country like Argentina and the way the game's covered from that perspective, maybe not following players out to the parking lot and those sorts of things. We'll see how that goes over time. But the way that they balance the stories, and it doesn't feel dismissive of the way they talk about the domestic league, even though, yes, the Argentine league is not the Premier League. It's not La Liga. It's players want to go to those leagues and leave Argentina. But the local domestic league is taken very seriously and talked about in a very serious manner. And I hope that MLS gets to that point. I hope USL Championship and every other league gets to that point too. Speaking of which, we had an announcement while Felipe was on about the schedule for the NISA and the third division league that has now been sanctioned by U.S. Soccer, but also has a schedule and has a team in Atlanta in it, by the way, and it's Atlanta SC. You remember those guys?
Yes.
They played in the NPSL this summer. They kind of picked up they did pick up the mantle of the Atlanta Silverbacks when the professional team died. They are what is actually left of a team that I helped start, Atlanta FC Football Club, that launched in 2008 in the NPSL and then partnered with the Silverbacks to be the Silverbacks Reserves. Now they have joined the NISA in a professional manner, and they'll have 7 professional matches this fall. And they will play Stumptown Athletic, which is a team in Charlotte. They will play the Philadelphia Fury, and they'll play at Franklin Field in Philadelphia for that one on September 21st. They will play, as I scroll down, they'll host the Fury on September 28th. That first game where Atlanta SC plays Stumptown Athletic, that will be on September 14th. That's Atlanta SC's first game in the NISA, and it will be at St. Francis High School, which is in Alpharetta, correct?
Yeah, it's in Alpharetta.
Okay.
North of the city.
That's their home stadium, I'm guessing. There has not been an announcement from Atlanta SC, by the way. The league announced it, and it was a different logo that was posted on the NISA website than what they had used in the NPSL, and the Atlanta SC website, as of last night, had not tweeted anything about joining the NISA, but I don't know. September 28th, they host the Philadelphia Fury. They then return to action on October 6th, where they go to Miami to face Miami FC, who has joined the NISA. They play at Barry University. They host Miami FC on October 12th. Then they go back to Franklin Field again on October 19th. Then they go to Stumptown Athletic to play at the Sportsplex at Matthews on October 25th. That's interesting. And then that was their last regular season game. I believe it was 7 if I counted them all. I might have missed one. And then there's an East Coast Championship match on November 16th, a West Coast Championship match because you have teams in Los Angeles, in San Diego, California United, which I believe is in the L.A. area. And are those the 3? Oakland Roots as well in Oakland, obviously. Yes. And they just signed Jack McInerney. You have an East Coast Championship and a West Coast Championship. Those are on November 16th. The champions will win automatic bids to the Spring 2020 playoffs. They're doing kind of a split season, but not exactly in an Apertura Clausura kind of manner. It's all coming together really fast. You have this league kicking off on August 31st with an exhibition at Keyworth Stadium, Detroit City FC. Chattanooga FC will be playing an exhibition as well with NISA. They'll be playing Stumptown Athletic later in the season. But the first official league match is Oakland and California United on August 31st. You have a lot of rosters to fill out.
Yes. Detroit City and Philadelphia Fury also on that date.
Yeah, that's the one that's the exhibition. Detroit City's not in the league.
Yeah.
That's what I was saying. They're not in the league, so that's an exhibition. Chattanooga FC is an exhibition when they play league team Stumptown Athletic. I'm curious. I mean, the league was sanctioned by U.S. Soccer as a Division III professional league. The teams have to meet certain standards to play in that league. You have to have ownership of a certain stature. I believe it's $10 million net worth. It's going to be very intriguing to see how this comes off because it does feel like you're getting on the field how quick and who's
6
playing
weeks
for you. And we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. So you're looking at just over 5 weeks before you hit the field in Oakland and with Cal United. So, yeah, I want to see the signings. I want to see, there's a lot of stuff I want to see basically between now and 5 weeks from now.
Yeah. I'm just waiting to get some more answers because everything at the lower division level has gotten really chaotic as of late. The NPSL Founders Cup has turned into a much smaller competition. There's a lot of talk about teams like Detroit City and Chattanooga eventually joining NISA and the fact that it seems like they're playing official exhibitions that NISA are promoting. Yeah. Things are changing fast. and we will see how all of this shakes out. I don't know how it's all going to turn out.
No.
I'm really intrigued to how this is going to go, and I hope that teams that are making the step up, just like we've always said about NPSL or USL League 2 teams making the step up to the professional level, it's a big jump, and I hope that they are prepared to find some sustainability as opposed to being a flash in the pan. I don't want to see teams show up and then disappear quickly. I hope that they can find a way to be sustainable and last.
And we were getting into what's on the top of the fold for Tormenta. It's a big weekend in Statesboro. And I know that we're not going to really have the chance to talk about it tomorrow since we're all kind of spread to the 4 wins, but caught up with Ian Cameron, the head coach of Tormenta FC2. That's going to be released as a 1v1 later on, probably later this afternoon, if not early tomorrow. Since they are part of the national semifinals in USL League 2, they're hosting Reading this weekend. So it's a busy weekend in Statesboro with Tormenta with a match on Saturday. I think it's against Lansing. Then you have the national semifinal in League 2 on Sunday, and you have the academy activity going on as well, and we'll try to get you up to date on that in the early part of next week. So a lot of stuff going on in Statesboro this weekend on multiple levels of the soccer world when it comes here to the States. Very, very cool.
Yeah, the academy stuff, just so people understand what's happening, they are fully funding 3 teams, 2 boys, 1 girls team, that it's a pilot program with sponsors to give those teams as close to a professional experience as possible. It's like an MLS academy would be in terms of you're just there to play. You're there to show up and play. You're not cutting a check. Your parents aren't cutting a check. It's not about who's got the most money to play in this team. It's about who has the most talent. And it's very cool to see a USL League 1 team that has a USL League 2 team attached and an academy attached get to that kind of level, because those are the things where you start to see dramatic differences, and players who are in South and Central Georgia have an opportunity for professional instruction that they've never had before. And you've had great coaches in those areas, but to be in a situation like this where it is truly just about talent and the development of that talent, that's a huge step. And I've always said that there's no reason why every top national team player should be coming from a few different locations like California or like Florida or like the Pennsylvania area where you have history, you have, the right coaching, the right clubs, the right environment to develop. You should have top players coming from Statesboro, Georgia, or Montgomery, Alabama, or Jackson, Mississippi. There's no reason why they can't. It's the environment that they're in, it's the level of coaching that they get, and it's the attention to detail. And it's cool to see Tormenta have that attention to detail as they are developing a sustainable club.
Let's see. Also on the board, Tofka apologizes for his late comment about Vasquez. He was on deadline yesterday, office until 8 o'clock. He says, "Forgive me."
I thought Tofka had said it yesterday. I can't remember who did the red alert. Oh, I think it was Daniel Price who did the red alert yesterday. Usually the red alert deal is a Tofka special. So I assumed that was a Tofka
Daniel Price
yesterday.
wanted the thunderstorm submitted for Brandon Vasquez.
Yeah, but we talked about it yesterday. It sounds like a situation where it's a tweak. He was pulled out as a precaution. He did travel. We don't know any updates, but I think it does affect potentially his ability to start on Friday night.
And then Tofka says, "Oh snap, I'm Jason being nice to John Old. I am too, but," and then posting the burn gif from Ashton Kutcher.
Well, I'm just a jerk. I'll stop being a jerk.
Yeah, and Jason Heinley says, "Apparently you are pretty mean with me."
I'm a jerk. Everybody thinks so I'm doing that. I apologize. I will
what
laugh,
else is
though,
in
when
news?
when you put Carlos Grueso in your fantasy team and he's not playing in the league anymore. I will have to laugh.
He's not in this country.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to help you with fantasy points.
Unless he flies back. But no,
he's not on the roster anymore.
He done got swapped out. It's okay. The roster is full.
That's good. It's glad we had that moment.
Yes.
No, I'm a jerk.
Oh. What else is in news, notes, and nugs before we go?
I don't know. I learned I was a jerk, so that kind of threw me for a loop. Let's see. Nuggets, one that I tweeted yesterday that grabbed my attention. Oklahoma City Energy owner and U.S. Soccer Foundation partner in OKC to upgrade school athletic fields and build futsal courts. That's really, really cool. It's an organization called Fields and Futures. Tim McLaughlin, who's a co-owner of OKC Energy FC. That nonprofit organization's renovating fields at 7 middle schools. I guess there were consolidations across the Oklahoma City School District. But these facilities some of them are reconfigured elementary schools, what have you. Some of these schools didn't have athletic fields. So this organization, Fields and Futures, which the president is the co-owner of OKC Energy FC in the USL Championship, has worked out a partnership with the U.S. Soccer Foundation to do these fields. And they're going to do 10 futsal fields. Each mini pitch exceeds $500,000 to do. It's a partnership involving the U.S. Soccer Foundation, Musco Lighting, 7-Eleven is involved, the Energy Assist Foundation, which is a component of the OKC Energy. I love that they're going to futsal with this because since I kind of got into futsal and discovered futsal, I feel like for kids 12 and under, it is the best way to develop skills. It is the best way to teach the game for kids that age. The ball, if you're not familiar with it, it's usually played on a basketball court. It's a ball that's a little bit heavier. I think it's between a 3 and a 4 size-wise. It's a special ball. It doesn't bounce as much. So it's about keeping the ball on the ground. It's about foot skills. And a lot of it, something that I never learned as a kid, and I was honestly taught the opposite, was a lot of it is using the sole of your foot. And when you look at the best players in the world and you look at their ability in tight space, the sole of the foot and being able to pull the ball back and manipulate it, it's critical. And to have futsal be more mainstream in the United States, and in an area like Oklahoma City, I don't think there's a player from Oklahoma City who has ever played for a U.S. national team. It's crazy. Why? Why not?
Yeah.
There's no reason for that. These types of investments are going to change that.
And I like that. We've mentioned Oklahoma City in the past when it comes to Oklahoma City as a market in USL Championship. And I think that when you see the success of OKC, it's one of those markets that you know their love of the game, you know their love and the growth of it. And I think that when OKC on the pitch is doing well, I think that it helps out that entire dynamic there in Oklahoma City. But to see this kind of effort going on, heck, when I was in elementary school, I played futsal. Wasn't very good at it, but nevertheless, I played it, and that was here in the in the Southeast back in the late 1800s.
But they didn't call it futsal.
To see kids,
there's a difference. Playing indoor soccer and futsal are very different things, and that's something to keep in mind here because I played indoor soccer as a kid at the soccer academy in Lilburn on a kind of a hockey rink type of indoor soccer field. I also played in a gym with the oversized tennis ball. None of those are futsal. Futsal is a very unique thing. I think a lot of people kind of lump it all together, but it's not. Futsal is the field is great to do it, but it's the way you actually implement the programming and the games. You've got to use that smaller, heavier ball. You've got to stress the way that futsal is played to really get the true effect. Indoors, nice. I think a lot of times indoor becomes a little more physical than it should be, but futsal is a different mentality altogether. So it's a very important distinction that it's not just your traditional indoor soccer.
Yeah, but no, I mean, but still, when you have that kind of effort going on in Oklahoma City, I think that's excellent when it comes to the growth of the game in and of itself. And I think that the effort being made, I think, is just really, really cool that they're doing that kind of stuff. And you hope it rubs off on others when it comes to markets that are truly invested in the game.
Well, this group's done this for a while, too. Fields and Futures started upgrading and maintaining Oklahoma City public school fields in 2012. First 7 years, they improved 22 fields. They're managing 8 renovation projects this summer. So it's a lot of work, a lot of times, millions of dollars, and this group is helping bridge that gap for a school district that doesn't have millions of dollars. Oklahoma City Energy contributes $2 of every ticket they sell to the Fields and Futures Initiative. That's amazing, and it's had an impact. Some of the results that they're already getting from their research. After improving fields at Jefferson Middle School, Fields and Futures surveyed 65 of the school's female athletes. Since playing team sports, 91% of the girls said they were more motivated to attend school, 94% were more motivated to stay academically eligible, and 84% had improved grades.
That's cool.
Those numbers are very important. 80% were more likely to say no to drugs and alcohol. Almost all of the athletes wanted to go to college. 3/4 of them said that team sports made them happier. All of these things are typical across the board when you implement these kinds of programs. To implement these kinds of programs, you have to have the space to do it. They do go hand in hand, and got to give all kinds of kudos to OKC Energy for, go back to sustainability. These are the types of things that create a culture of sustainability.
Yeah, and now I'd love to see who else grabs onto this mantle and runs forward with it. And the fact that you have OKC being this kind of an example, you hope it rubs off and continues to multiply. You hope that this is those numbers that were put out as a part of the study. That's big, especially for the teenagers today looking for something to do and then having this kind of an outlet and being able to grow and experience all of the team stuff that we all got as kids in whatever sport we were in. I think that's strong, and it's good to see.
It's critical. And when you get into just how difficult it is in schools these days, especially public schools that don't have a lot of funding, it does take this kind of help. And these types of programs can be the difference between kids dropping out and staying in school, and kids being motivated to keep those grades up and do the things that they need to do to eventually become self-sufficient and independent young adults. Sports can have a massive impact on it, and I've seen it firsthand. I've seen it with soccer. So when I see projects like this in Oklahoma City, it's important to talk about, because it needs to happen more often where teams can do that. I think from a long term, we talked about NISA and talked about what Tormenta's doing, and now OKC Energy. It's these types of things where you can get beyond, doing a GoFundMe to get to a playoff game or to keep the doors open, and when you can start to actually plant roots. And Tormenta doing it with Academy, with OKC doing it with this type of work from a foundation perspective. All of those kids grow up with the Oklahoma City Energy. And they're going to want the T-shirt, and it's going to mean something to them, and they're going to want to go to the game, and they're going to want the jersey of their favorite player. Those things change the culture, and it's hard sometimes when you are focused on just keeping the doors open and doing what you have to do to function. But it's these types of investments that actually keep you going and change things and create an environment where you can be successful. So very cool to see OKC Energy behind that. Anything else we need to hit on before we go?
I think, we are officially caught up on the Twitters, sir.
All right. Tomorrow morning, it will be a recorded show in the morning with lots of special guests. Who all you talking to?
Well, let's see. We've already talked to Joe Patrick Dirty South Soccer. We're catching up with Chris Furmeister from Pro Soccer USA and Doug Robertson from the AJC, because we have to have predictions.
Of course.
And so we will analyze all that stuff and probably re-air the segment that we did this morning with Felipe Cardenas from The Athletic as well.
Excellent. And after all of that, that'll post in the morning. Sometime in the early afternoon Atlanta time, probably late morning LA time, Mike Conti and I will have a live Q&A with you. If you have questions, go ahead and throw them in at us at Twitter, Mike Conti 929, at Soccer Down Here, at Longshoe. We'll get to those doing a live podcast from the road before we head over to Bank of California Stadium. Tomorrow night, we'll have the pregame coverage starting at 9:30 East Coast time. 10 o'clock kick, and it's a national broadcast, so maybe it's a little bit closer to a 10:15 or 10:20 kick. I've not seen a timesheet as of yet. Get ready, drink some extra coffee, have the Red Bull ready, Monster, whatever your drink of choice is. We will have an hour of post-game coverage following the game. Sometimes on these late-night games we don't because we're rushing to catch a charter. We are not rushing to catch a charter for this one. We will be leisurely heading to catch a red-eye because we wanted to get back as soon as possible. So we will have a full hour of the full-time report. However you're watching the game, if you're not able to listen to us, you can flip on the radio afterwards for an hour of post-game coverage. And then we'll be back to a normal schedule on Monday as we have an Overreaction Monday to break everything down. But check out everything starting tomorrow morning. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Thanks for all the great interaction and all the great questions all week. More to come. Much plot, y'all.
Much plot, y'all.